The parable of the 10 virgins is that parable from Matthew 25 that is the two groups. And he just divides it into two groups. And I'm just going to go there with him for two groups. There will be, at the end, a group of people who knowingly know that they're ready, who knowingly know that they're getting ready specifically for the bridegroom to come, and who know that they need to be adequately equipped for a long wait until that end comes. And when the end comes, that group is ready. And they are brought into the reward of readiness. And then there's a group that was pretty sure they were ready, that wanted to be ready, that was functioning in a mentality of readiness. But little did they know until the moment came of revelation, oh, I don't actually have full readiness. And they wanted it, so they went to the group that was ready and said, help us out. Share some of your readiness. And Dan, this is the point that you and I love to talk about. Nobody can get you ready but you. You are completely responsible for your choices of what you do with your oil. Not your pastor, not your leader, not your elder, not your mother, daughter, dog, or whatever. You've got to make choices to make yourself ready. And it does help to have a group. So there's at the end going to be a group of people who suddenly realize that they want to be ready, they need to be ready, they've wanted to be ready, and they suddenly came to the awareness that what they were doing to get ready was not sufficient. And they go to those who they know are ready, and they say, help us get ready, and those people say, ain't nobody can help you but you. And you should have been ready before. And now that you know that you're not ready, and you're not going to have readiness in time, hurry up. And so they rush off into the path of readiness, and they do the stuff that gets them ready. In this case, they go to the market. But here's the point that Jesus makes. It took time between the moment of realization that they weren't ready, the going and the getting of ready, and the returning to the place of vigilance. There was a time gap. That's that time? That is the gap called maturity and maturation. Because you cannot microwave maturity. Forgiveness is in an instant. Salvation is in an instant. But bridal readiness, bridal maturity is a process. And that process takes time. And you can't suddenly hurry it up when you realize that you should have been on that path. And when you realize that you should have been on that path and now you start off on it, you may not have the time it takes to go get ready to enter into maturity and come back in time before the cutoff comes. What? Jesus wouldn't do that. He's the one who made the parable. It's his parable. Okay? He's telling you what he's going to do. And then you can't say you didn't know because you read it.
But God, I didn't know. He's like, it's been written in a book for 2,000 years.
Okay? And his point and my point and the point we're making is not everybody's going to make the cut. And that's the point of why not everybody's the bride. And I'm not saying that I'm going to make the cut just because I know about the cut. Knowing about the cut doesn't mean you're ready for the cut. You got to enter into this thing with sobriety, which I think Peter said, be sober-minded and dress for action. You've got to enter into what Paul talked about, man, make some choices about walking worthy. You got to do what Song of Solomon says and learn how to be a Shulamite, not a daughter of Jerusalem. You ever think about that one? There were fans.
I'm sure everyone.
They just woke up this morning thinking about being the Shulamite instead of the daughter of Jerusalem.
That's a Song
of Solomon reference where there's a group of people who are fans of the beloved, but they didn't qualify for bridal union. They didn't. And Solomon's the emblem of the multiplicity of bridal vessel. And so there's many who could be queen. And the daughters of Jerusalem just weren't able to be queen. So they were outside looking in. But the Shulamite was queenly and qualified. So we're in this place with the parable of the 10 virgins who are waiting for a bridal feast, and they are ready. Well, dovetail that perfectly in with Revelation 19:7, where the bride has kept herself ready, made herself ready. You don't think Jesus is thinking about the parable of the 10 virgins when he had Revelation 19:7 written about the bride has made herself ready? That doesn't have any correlation in his mind. They're two unrelated concepts. No, they're not unrelated concepts. They are perfectly related. The point that still remains is it doesn't matter what you and I individually do if Jesus gets enough people who do what it takes to get ready. He will open that door, take who's ready, and close the door.
Yeah, and we want to point out again that not everything in Scripture, when it talks about the door being closed and outer darkness, is talking about heaven and hell. I've used this term before of there's a lot of ignorantly bridal, where it's just you have the sweet old lady that puts in a little tiny talent or whatever it is into the couple pennies into the offering basket, and Jesus is like, she's given more than everybody else. Like, this is just some person, right? That's not sitting at the feet of Jesus and getting martyred. It's just someone that's just quietly faithful and doesn't know all of these things and have sought the Lord. There's a thief on the cross that was in the paradise of the Lord the same day he was murdered, only moments after realization that he was in sin and that Christ was the Messiah and blameless. We don't talk a lot about salvation, quote unquote, and heaven and hell, although there's a place for that. And it's significant and important, and we do believe in hell, and we do believe that that's happening. We're really talking to Christians. We're talking to people that we're assuming have been at least on a journey of faith for some time. And where you are in that journey is we're trying to bring you where we're trying to go ourselves, which is our own journey of completion. And that doesn't mean complete in sinless perfection. It means completion in readiness, completion in love of for the Lord, trying to give God what he's after, trying to come into alignment with his eternal purpose and his eternal will and his eternal gospel. There's something Christ is after. He has an inheritance in you. As much as he is our inheritance, we are his inheritance as well. And we can keep him from getting it. And so really our cry, the cry of the bride, the bridal cry ministry is that Christ would get everything he paid for, that the Lamb would receive the reward of his sufferings, and that he would have a bride that is ready, and that you would be a part of that, and that we would be a part of it. Honestly, one of my biggest fears is like, God, like, I just feel like I'm missing stuff. And I can't wear an old Leatherman jacket of past accomplishments in my faith. Like, God's calling me to a current and active readiness now. And I'm on my own journey of what that means for me personally. I got to listen to the Spirit and not just sit in the comforts of, well, I host a podcast about this, so clearly I'm good. If we've learned anything in the last recent months and years, it's that some of the most notorious, prominent voices in Christianity are coming down with some massive failures. Massive failures. Massive sin failures. And so no one is above reproach here. And Matt and I have to be diligent in this just as much as you do as well. But anyway, so we're not just talking, I don't want you to think like, oh my goodness, my salvation, like your salvation, quote unquote, is secure in Christ. When you continue to press on in him. What we're talking about is what that second judgment's going to look like. We want to know what our report card is now before the Lord. Like, wouldn't you want to know your, like, Revelation, right? The 7 letters to the churches. Like, wouldn't you want to receive that while you're alive on earth and can do something about it rather than standing before him and then all of a sudden getting slapped across the face like in Matthew 7? Like, oh, crap. Wait, what? Didn't I? Whoa, God. What do you mean? I thought. Nope. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. Well, crap. Like, that's painful now to hear. Like, when the Lord corrects me, gosh, it sucks. And then you got to do something about that correction. Okay, well, do I actually want to change, or do I just want to pretend like that was just indigestion from last night and not actually the Spirit telling me to change and to pursue different things? Like, what do I do here? But the reality is, like, when you stand before the Lord, you are going to take an account of all the deeds that you did, because the bride is clothed in the righteous deeds of the saints. And there's multiple scriptures, especially in Revelation, where it talks about, like, no, you're going to be held to account for everything you did. It's not having to do with salvation at this point. Again, that's what we're talking about. But it does have to do with what you inherit and how you enter into this new heaven and this new earth, and what role and what position. There are those he talks about who overcomers, which we're delineating. I think, if anything, if we're to use different language, like, we're talking about overcomers right now versus everyone else. So there's those who overcome and get access to all these things, and there are those who are like the thief that just kind of enter, smelling like smoke, as Paul would say in 1 Corinthians, right? There are those who get through the skin of their teeth, and there are those that actually overcome and get to inherit a lot of really cool things. And one of them is that you'll be a pillar in the temple of God, and you won't have to come out and go. Because one of the things, if you're familiar with the Old Testament system, which I'm sure all of you guys are, just kidding, is that when you came in to do your sacrifices, and when the priest would come in and come out of the temple, they'd put on their priestly robes, they'd go do their priestly ministry, and then they'd leave and put on their common stuff. And there was this constant in and out of the presence of God. Well, there's promises, and this is what I think motivates me the most, is like, there's promises here to overcomers where it's like, I will make you a pillar in the temple of God, and you won't have to come in and go out. You just get to stay. It's like, whoa. Better is one day in the courts of God than 1,000 elsewhere, right? It's like, goodness, if I could just stay there in the presence of God and just like be that bride that just gets to sit on his throne with him and get to be in all those inner conversations. Whew. That's cool. Not just to be like the guy that gets to show up once a year and like say hi and give a high five and leave. And then like you get to see that cool, like, even when you think about like the inner three, the three disciples that seem to have this inner relationship with Jesus, like, I'm sure it's just like, man, you know, when like your friends go to a party and you're like, a bunch of your friends go and you weren't invited. you ever have that happen to you? And you're like, man, how come I wasn't invited to that? It's like, well, we just wanted time with ourselves. Well, why? Well, because we got a different thing going. There's a different level of intimacy here that we like it when you come to some things, but there's other things that like, it's just closer. And that's special. I want that. And so I don't know about you listening to this, but that's what I want. And I think that's the heart and the cry is, goodness, like when you fall in love with the Lord, there's nothing you want more than him. And this is supposed to be a union with Christ, and this is supposed to be love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And it's like, do we actually love him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength? We're so focused on the Great Commission that we usurp and assume the Great Commandment. It's like, man, when you make the Great Commission into the Great Commandment, you kind of burn yourself out. And you feel guilt and shame when you're not evangelizing or when you're not, at a Bible study or when you're not at a thing. But when you make it love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, the Great Commission just kind of happens. And you don't even really think about it. Now, granted, you can think about it like, well, I need to be vigilant to make sure I don't just hide my lamp under a basket kind of thing, because we can get into this monastic lifestyle where we're not actually interacting with the world. But man, when you love God, it oozes out of you, and you won't even be counting up your good deeds, because it's not about a check mark. It's not about how many people you saved. It's just, I'm just loving people. Why? Because I love God, and of course I'm just going to love the people around me. Why would I not love the people around me? That's crazy.